Stream is live.
All right, team. Well, it wouldn't be a KMR event without a little bit of a technical issue to kick us off. So we've now got that cleared up. Welcome to the next of our series of stories for Punani with the KMR crew. I'm being joined tonight by three absolute legends who are going to take us through tonight and have a little bit of talk about mental strength and running. You've probably known them, you've probably seen them. Between us, we have 4 Australian mountain running championships, an Australian of the Year award, the Churchill Fellowship, and a race record in the Bruny Island Ultra down here in Tassie. That's got nothing to do with me. That is the legends that I'm now sitting with. To introduce them to you all, for starting, we have Grace Tame. You may know her. Grace was an former Australian of the Year in 2021, and she's an activist and advocate for survivors of sexual assault. She also holds the record for the Bruny Island Ultra 64-kilometre race. Absolutely fantastic effort in that one from Grace. We're welcoming her from a cafe in London. So if you do hear her being offered a latte or a yellow juice, that is so that she can steal their Wi-Fi. And she also has 42% power left. So at some point, Grace is probably just going to disappear on us. But we'll get her thoughts on the mental strength and running before she goes. I'm also joined by Simone Brick, the Flying Brick, on Instagram. She is the 4-time Australian mountain running champion. She knows everything there is to know about running fast up on those mountains. She's also been through a fair bit in her life, and her story is quite remarkable to where she's come from and the mental strength she's used to get through the harder times in her life to become a successful mountain runner, and of course Salomon athlete. And Salomon is one of our fantastic partners this year for the Punani Mountain Run. And of course, in the dark there, in the mood lighting with the mountain behind him, is our Run Director Lincoln. He's a Churchill Fellowship holder. He is the madman who designs all our courses and gets us up there on the mountain, and the brainchild of KMR is his. Don't forget to put your questions up in the chat. We will get to those as we go along. Any questions you have for these three absolute superstars. There's Grace's yellow juice. It looks delicious. Absolute superstars of trail running. They will answer any questions we have up. What we're going to do, though, is we're going to start with one that I have for them, and just to kick us off and a little bit of a chat. And I don't think we're going to have any problems tonight. I think the 4 of us could probably be in the Olympic team for talking when it comes to this stuff. But I'm going to put it to, we're going to start with you, Simone. I'll throw to you first. Have a little bit of a chat about when you first realised that you had the mindset for mountain running, for getting out there on the trails, and the ability to put your body through what you have to be up there for hours on end running in the fantastic wilderness around Australia and the world.
I feel like I've just realised that's an interesting question, because I knew I had the mindset to do hard things and incredibly long, hard things before I even started running. But that came, for me personally, purely through gritting out a very grueling eating disorder recovery to begin with, that then my whole life went haywire anyway, and getting through a lot of stuff on that end. But I only started running purely because I was like, I've just done something harder than I thought I could ever do in my life, because took me to hell and back multiple times over. But it was all mentally hard. And then I want to tackle physically hard challenges to now use this new mental strength. And that's what actually got me into running, originally on the road. And then as soon as I found trail and realized that the marathon wasn't the limit, and that I was allowed to go for a while there, I was the 20K runner that my coach would coach, because he's been pulling me back for a long time for my own good. But as soon as he let me off the reins, I'd just go for a 10 to 12 hour run because I could. So mindset I learned a long time before running, but the trails and learning to work with them and realizing I had the power to move through them for a very long time, that came a lot later, probably a few years later. And the first time I remember feeling powerful enough to just run all day on the trails was one of those first runs where my coach told me I was no longer on a plan, and I just went for a run and didn't come home for 10 hours. So learn through doing.
Yeah, nice. And obviously, as for those who know your story, the eating disorder stuff was pretty big in your life, and to have the strength to get through that probably helps you up on the mountain to know that you can get through that hard stuff.
Oh yeah, no mountain run, no matter how bad it gets out there, will ever be as hard as that. Or even what came before or after that for me. So I've honed the mental strength in life, and I celebrate it on the trails.
Nice one. Now, you may have noticed, guys, it looks like we've just lost Grace for a moment from that cafe in London. So what about you, Lincoln? You obviously love it out there on the trails, but when did you decide, or when did you figure out that your mind was capable of doing what's needed to run these sort of distances?
Yeah, good question. I don't know. For me, it's just all about froth. Like, I just, see mountains and want to go play. And, for me, it's like just sort of drawing lines on the landscape to feel that landscape in a different format. Like, you could see it from different vistas, but if you're feeling it by traversing it, that's just something so beautiful for me, whether that was snowboarding or climbing and now trail running. So I think, maybe the answer to the question is, as a kid doing, multi-day, off-track bushwalks or multi-day rafting trips and just frothing so hard on being out there for a long time, so deeply immersed in the activity and the bush, the nature that you're out there doing. Then 2017, I kind of ended up running the Kokoda track in Papua New Guinea, 96k, 6,000 meters vert. Trail running, did a lot of the best kept secret of, your hiking. I actually had to start running to get the time we were planning to get. And then that was the light bulb moment of, so that's trail running. So, now I can go and run all these multi-day bushwalks in Tassie that I'm really wanting to be going doing, but just don't seem to have time in life to do. I can just go and do it in a day now. Or, single push might be 30, 40 hours, whatever it might be. But yeah, so kind of similar to Sim, but from a different approach that, it's always kind of been there. And it just sort of came into view from a trail running perspective more recently.
Yeah, okay. Do you think that that strength of mind that you've had from running has been really taken into other areas of your life? Has it made you stronger in that way as well?
Oh, for me, 100%. Like, the achievement of, doing something really big and long and having to dig so deep to get there, and the amount of focus that you need to be safe and to get to the other end is hugely powerful. It's like, well, if I can do that, then other things in life, well, sure, we can do that too. And that sense of, well, what can I accomplish? You can keep expanding that, and for me, it's directly relevant to the rest of life. But yeah, how about you, Sim?
Yeah, I feel like it's the same, but again, for me, the opposite way around. Because for me, running is that whole safe way to use the mental strength I've got. Not always going to say safe, not every scenario we're in, but at the same time, it's like this outlet for focusing on and using the strength for good. And I think for a long time I was in that negative spiral of knowing I had a lot of strength, but using it to destroy myself, and running is my way of using my strength to build myself back up. So I've never looked at it as, personally for me, I've never looked at it as running is teaching me the strengths that I then apply to life. It's almost like life teaches me the strengths that I then apply to running. And I practice and hone in running, because obviously, especially with mental strength, I feel like they can come and go depending on your life circumstances at any point in time and how often you use them. So yeah, just opposite in a way.
Yeah, we talk a bit about, obviously, Simone. I've heard your story, and found it very, very powerful. Would you be up for letting the people who are watching know a little bit about how you came into running?
Yeah, for sure. Running for me, Grace is back. Hello. Running for me, my first ever run where I realized the power of running, I actually did from a hospital. So I had been through a lot in my early childhood that then transpired to, which Grace knows plenty about. I'm a survivor of very early childhood sexual assault. And then without really knowing or comprehending anything that I'd been through until I was a much older teenager, and trying to come to terms with that while you're also trying to navigate being a teenager is not a fun time. So as soon as I left the structure of school, I developed anorexia nervosa, spent a very long time in treatment for that. And it was in that period after that where, rather than everything get better once I had physically recovered, if not mentally, everything got worse because I was still trying to deal with a lot of the things I'd been through. And I lived in hospitals, essentially. For 2 years, I probably spent 1, if not 18 months of that in living in hospitals. I still will remember the day that I was finally, after I think 4 weeks straight of not being allowed out for walks because I was a flight risk, I kind of proved them right because they let me out for a 10-minute walk, and I ran, but not to run away from the hospital. I kind of just ran because I had all this, I don't even know what it was. I just had this desire to run, and I ran, and to be fair, it was a bad idea because I just kept running. But I ran 10Ks straight up, just first time. But that was the amount of mental energy I had at the time. And I can still remember just getting back to the hospital after being taken back, and going, I feel better. Like that right there, that was better than any drug I've taken in this hospital. It was just this really, really powerful moment of going, hang on a second, like that did a lot better for me than I was essentially being sedated through most days for my own safety. So it was this incredibly powerful thing that then I kept in a safe way, mum or my dog, or like I'd always have mum or dad with me on my running journey. For the first couple of years, I wasn't allowed to run solo, but I was slowly allowed to develop a relationship with running that was healthy. And it was through that I say that running didn't save me, but running allowed me to save myself, because it gave me the space, not only the endorphins and all the good feels, but it gave me the space to process everything that I was then working on with my psychs and with my treatment team at that point in time. And I've had my ups and downs with it, but that was my way into it for sure. And again, it was that idea that as soon as I'd found running, I went, okay, I've done the mentally hard things, and now I'm going to run a marathon, as the typical recreational runner at the age of 20 to 21 goes. And yeah, ran a marathon, and I was hook, line, and sinker. Haven't looked back much since.
It's a pretty regular story with runners, isn't it? They do that one event, and then it's like, wow, this is amazing. I can get that done. I do have that.
Yeah.
I've got it up here. I can get that done. What else can I do? Yeah, I know when.
Yeah, it certainly helped that I ran 10 minutes under the time I was aiming for and won.
Yeah. I'll swing to you now, Grace. Thanks for coming back.
That's okay.
They kicked you off the Wi-Fi there. One yellow juice wasn't enough. Obviously, your story is probably pretty well known. Certainly down here in Tassie, it's very well known. And I just asked Simone about how she used, or how running was a way, and Simone said it didn't save her from that, but it saved, it had another function for her. How was running for you when you were going through what you had to get through, when the mental strength needed for that?
Yeah, my story is quite similar to Simone's at many intersections. At the time that I was going through the second lot of abuse, so I was abused in early childhood as well, in the home, and that ended up feeding into what happened to me later at my high school. And it was actually...
We are similar on that front too.
Yeah, so it was actually...
it's always the same.
And I developed anorexia before I was... before I went through the story that people are quite familiar with. And in fact, it was the vulnerability that I had from anorexia, which drew this particular offender to me. And at that time, I wasn't running. I was running a lot in childhood. My mum describes me as somebody who was ready to rock and roll as soon as I was awake, even as an infant. And before I could walk, I would pull myself up in my cot and be looking around the room, ready to go. My cousin, who's only 3 days older than me, was the polar opposite. Mum said you could just leave him and he'd sit there, whereas I would figure out how to roll around, and they needed to get a pen for me. And so I've always had that adventurous spirit. But when I was sidelined for anorexia treatment when I was 14, like Simone, I spent a good chunk of time in hospital. I remember my muscles atrophying because I wasn't allowed to walk. I was deemed such a health risk. And it's only been in the last 4 years or so, 4 or 5 years, that I've actually come back to running. And it's been a very turbulent process because much like Simone was saying earlier about figuring out what happened, when you're a child, it takes a really long time to actually distill that because you don't have any other frame of reference. So I'm still unpacking a lot of that, and running sort of mirrors my life. So wherever I'm at, if you look at how my running is, which has bordered into the extreme before, and then it goes through periods of balance, that's a pretty good indicator of where I'm at. So when I first got back into running, I got into it, and then it became actually an unhealthy thing for me. It's taken a lot of trial and error to find a sweet spot. But yeah, I mean, I remember my first marathon was in Tasmania. It was the 10-year anniversary for me of everything that happened at my high school, and it was quite symbolic. My mum and I drove up from Hobart. We drove up the Midlands, and she set up a chair because it's a four laps of that grueling 10.5k course that has a little hill at the end, and she was moving a chair.
It's a great expression.
Oh no.
Yeah. Oh, Grace, that's a great expression.
Oh no. Yeah.
We've got the... Well, she is
Isn't that
coming
where
in
you
from
wanna be
London,
stuck?
so no.
Oh, so I'm not the only one who's seeing Grace freeze there on screen.
No, yeah.
Okay, cool.
No, I was
time we
thinking
had
that
was
too.
all
Am I
mine.
the only one that she's lost?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So we obviously have a little bit of an issue there with Grace, but we will wait for her to drop back in from London for us.
Bummer.
Now, we've got a question that's come up. And, guys, if you are listening on the live there, feel free to pepper us with questions. We'll get through as many as we can in the time we've got. But Claire Payne, hey, Claire, thanks for joining us on the live. And she has asked a pretty good question. I like this one. So whoever jumps in first can answer this one. She's asked, how did you get yourselves to that point where you're able to switch that mental strength into physical? With mental health and conditions being so powerful, how are we able to convert that and use the power in a different way, e.g. running?
That is a process. Yeah, that is a process and a half. First thing I'll say is with a lot of help. So for me, I almost had to get to a point mentally where I was stable enough to be able to even try to do that. It also took a lot of dogged determination at times, because particularly my first marathon, I obviously, being fresh out of anorexia treatment, they're very worried about you engaging in any sort of exercise. And so I had made this sort of pact with or just promised to myself and my treatment team that I was going to train for this marathon and I wasn't going to lose an ounce of weight while doing it. And the process of doing that, the day-to-day process, was brutal, purely because you have a training plan. To be fair, I was getting my training plan from Runner's World magazine or something like along those lines, and it would change from week to week. But it also had to change from day to day, because for me, there was just a few key rules I had to hold myself to that took everything I had at the time. And I actually did a talk about this a couple of days ago, but I developed this mantra for myself, and that was do the hard thing. Now, sometimes the hard thing is continuing a run and getting it done because it feels hard, but sometimes the hard thing is stopping a run because it's the right decision. So I had a golden rule, well, a couple of golden rules. One, I wasn't allowed to do a run that I wasn't fueled for. And two, I wasn't allowed to do a run. Like if I started thinking about, but this was just eating disorder related, but if I started thinking about how many calories I was burning on that run, I had to stop and walk home. That run was no longer allowed to happen. And for 8 months straight, I held myself to those standards. That resulted in a lot of walks home in tears, absolutely hating life. But it was only through sticking it out that I proved to myself that I was there for myself and not there for at that point in time, my eating disorder. Go to the future, and this turned into, I also wasn't allowed to use, unless I had someone else's guidance, because I did actually do this with my psych at times and with my current coach. He helped me do this at times, but I wasn't allowed to make this decision on myself, where I wasn't allowed to use running as an alternative to self-harm, because I did try to do that for a little bit. And again, it was this steadfast rule of if that was where my mind was at, I wasn't allowed to put my shoes on or step out the door. Now, I had people that I would turn to for help, but that still took me going, hey, Mum, I have this run planned. I'm about to go do it, but this is where my head's at. And then her being willing, thankfully I have a pretty incredible mother, being willing to go, okay, we're going to sit on the couch and watch a movie together, and not leaving me alone in those thoughts in that moment. So I leaned on a lot of people to then, but those first little decisions to say that out loud was the hardest part. And to say out loud, I know I shouldn't do this run, but I really want to go do it, for the wrong reasons. And it was only through going through that process for probably the first 2 years of running for me, that to and fro of, okay, is this run for a healthy reason? No, I can't do it. I have to go home. I just can't develop that with that. And the only reason I held myself to that was because running had already become so special to me. And I was like, I've had these mental illnesses that have ruined everything in my life so far, but I'm not letting them take running. And that's the foundation I stand on today, because even when I'm going through the worst periods at the moment, running doesn't become unhealthy again. But it's only through the hard work of, honestly, day to day to day to day, committing to doing it a healthy way. And you could change running for any physical activity, for any outlet that you want to maintain a healthy relationship with, and convert mental power for bad, as I was saying, or mental power that you have from mental health problems into something physically awesome. It's just, you have to be willing to go through that really, really hard process of day after day doing the hardest thing that you can, to then get to the good part. So I feel like a lot of people give up in that early stage going, nah, it's too hard to be constantly having this battle. And I couldn't work. I couldn't do anything at this point in time already in life. So I didn't have a huge amount of other things going on. But that battle took up 24/7 to actually make this transition happen into being able to run. So I don't know if that is a good thing to hear for people, but it's also or hard thing to hear because it is a hard process, but it's also something that once you get through that part and through the other side, now I only get the joy of it, and it is like nothing else. So I don't regret how hard it was at all, because now I'm on the other side.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, absolutely, 100% it does. It's a really, really, really good answer. What about you, Link? I'll get your view on that, and then I might throw the next question that we have up in the comments through to Grace. But what about you, Link?
Yeah. To answer to when was I able to switch the mental strength into physical? Well, I guess I've always been a physical person, been adventuring in the wild since I was 14, kind of thing, pretty strongly. And for me, the body does what it's told, and it's the mental strength that tells my body, hey, you're going to go out and do this because it's going to be fun. Yeah, it's going to hurt a lot, and you're gonna suffer, but you're going to enjoy that as well. For me, there's kind of three types of fitness. One is physical, and that's kind of a bit of a prerequisite in terms of the base fitness. Actual conditioning and peak fitness, well, I very rarely ever have any of that, but that's okay. I don't actually need that. The next fitness I say is mental, and that's the grit and the determination and the focus to keep going and next step. But so that's that mental strength that tells the body what to do to keep going physically. But then for me, the thing that's nice to have mental strength, but what feeds that? And for me, that's the psyche or the stoke or the emotional fitness, and that's my biggest strength. Is I'm just so stoked at being out there doing, have committed to something pretty epic that maybe someone hasn't done before, or it's a line, across the landscape that I've been looking at on maps and looking at from afar from different angles for a long time. That stoke feeds, and that's the want to be there. And this is why I'm here, and this is part of really who I am. It feeds my soul so strongly that that emotional will and stoke can just feed the mental energy. It can, each breath, I could draw energy from the landscape, from the wind, from the rain, from that tree over there. Hey, that rock's about to fall. Cool. Well, I'm not, just the landscape can draw energy out of, feed that into the mental energy focus to force the body to just keep going. So that's what happens for me. And it's, the body does do what it's told, and it hurts, but the achievement is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And all this ties into another question we've got there, which I'm going to throw to you, Grace. This one comes from Colleen Davidson. Thanks for joining us again, Colleen. Great to have you on board. I believe Colleen's one of our scholarship runners. So we're really looking forward to seeing her. It's not how long? What are we? 10, 11 days away from being up there. But what's Colleen's asked, and I remember this one when I started running. This was a big one for me. It was a pretty heavy voice in my head. And what Colleen's asked is, what are your go-to mantras when the little voice, or in most cases, the big voice in your head is telling you, you can't do this, just stop, go do something else? What do you go to, Grace?
I think that's a great question. And it entirely depends on the day and the conditions. It's interesting, my friend who I'm staying with at the moment in London, who actually helped me get back into running, was talking to me about how long distance runners, and there's research that's been done around this, long distance runners have this unique ability to block this chemical that we actually experience the release of when we do an endurance sport, and that is the chemical that basically tells your body to shut off. And the research shows that we have this ability to ignore that chemical, and we're really good at lying to ourselves, which sounds a bit negative, but I believe that. Like, for example, yesterday I ran in London for the first time. I don't know my way around here. I went on my Strava maps beforehand and kind of planned out a loose route, but I don't like running with my phone because that's my time to just switch off from everything. And it was pissing down, excuse my English, it was pissing down with rain. It was very, very grim. And my initial thoughts were, like I don't kid around. It was not nice. So my initial thoughts were, this is awful. But then I just sort of kicked myself, figuratively speaking, and I just said, you're having a good time. You're having a good time. It's okay. You're having a good time. And, depending on the style of running that I'm doing on any given day, so if it's a big ultra up, on a hilly mountainous course that goes for 56 Ks or something like that, the narratives that you tell yourself are very different to if you're doing a speed session and you actually don't have the capacity to hold very long thoughts. And in those moments, I kind of use the metronome of my cadence to be the rhythm of my mantra, and it'll just be something short like, I am strong, I am fast, I am powerful, I am strong, I am fast, I am powerful, and I'll just say that over and over again in my head to get through the rep. But when it's something more protracted, like I said, one of those big races where there's lots of time and there's also a lot of other things going on, I try to focus on the scenery and remind myself of the beauty that I might not be feeling internally, but that I can connect with, so that I can try and mirror that, and be really grateful. Gratitude is a really grounding force. So yeah, I'll just look around, and I'll another thing that anyone who's had struggles with mental health and dissociation, which is very common for people who've been abused as children, because you do have to actually create narratives that you can cope with in a situation that you really can't cope with. So one of the exercises that I defer to when I'm having a really tough day is to just, list 5 things that I can see. It might just be sky, feet, really rudimentary stuff, but it helps because you have to divert energy away from the negativity to something else.
Yeah, amazing. And if you'll indulge the rank amateur amongst us here, and I'll have a little bit of chat, because obviously I do this stuff as well. And I remember running in Sydney, and I was doing my year of running, and I came across a plaque in the ground that was for a young fella who'd passed away, died at the age of 17, I think it was, and he was known as the Rocket on his plaque. And it struck me, and it became a mantra of mine of, I get to run today. Not I have to run or I want to run, I get to run. And the number of people who don't get to run is, there's billions of them. So that's one of my mantras for you, Colin, is that, I get to run. Not about I have to run. Some days I have to run, but other ones I get to run, which is a pretty important way of looking at it, and a positive way to go. I get to get out there. I get to get out and be in the open air and see the mountain and do all that stuff. Don't forget to keep the questions coming in, guys. Those who are watching on, chuck them up in the comments. They do come through to us, and we will get to them and ask them as we come through. I guess a big one to ask, and I'm sure you've all been there during runs that you've been on. How do you deal with doubt? Well, do you ever doubt your abilities out there, in a big race? And how do you deal with that?
Ooh.
Who doesn't?
Yeah. Everyone doubts themselves.
Yeah. What the hell am I doing here? What am I? Yeah.
I think it dovetails nicely from the previous question about mantras, though. For example, a recent incident that I can think of is doing the Bruny Solo, which I'd never done before. So there was doubt going in before I even started, because I'd only ever raced a marathon, and this was essentially another half marathon on top of it. And I was intending to hold a pretty decent pace, and I'm familiar with the wall, that you hit kind of inevitably, and you just have to run through that fatigue. But I remember distinctly when I got to towards the end of the race, when it switches from that nice smooth tarmac to the gravel, and also that's when the hills come in. I just was saying to myself, because any of us going into this sort of stuff, all these events, we usually have some kind of base fitness, Lincoln, or we might have some conditioning as well. So we've done the work. There is actually a base of work to draw upon as evidence of our capability. And I just remember saying to myself when I was going up those rises, this is your bread and butter. You've done this. Like I actually quite like running up hills. I'm one of those strange masochistic types. But I just was saying to myself, you have done this. This is what you've trained for. And it was a little lie to myself, but it was the positive thinking that got me through it. And I was so distracted by that I kind of forgot about the fact that I was running up a hill and my toes were bleeding.
Yeah, for those that don't know about Bruny, it starts with a great big hilly section and ends with an even bigger hilly section. So that's I think that's a really good one. This is me. This is my bread and butter. This is what I do. You'd have that too, wouldn't you, Simone?
In a way, yeah. For me, I've always I feel like I've looked at running very logically in the way of going, okay, people's biggest limiting factor is their head, not their body. Purely for the fact that you can watch someone put in work day after day after day, and they should be able to pull off this certain time in a race or ability, and you watch it all fall apart on the day because of anxiety beforehand, or that voice saying, I can't do this, or just doubting their ability, even though they've got the body of work there. So I've always observed super early on that, like, your head's what gets in the way, not your body. Like, and I keep reminding myself of that, of going, my body can do this. It's my head I've got to convince. Now, this is where I'm going to say I'm lucky / not lucky, but I have the perspective of, I have been through a psychotic episode. And in that way, I have this little voice in my head going, your brain's not always telling you the truth. And that comes in super handy during a run, because there are many, many times my brain will be saying, you can't do this. You're like, this is the wrong environment. This is the wrong one. And the most recent one for me was I raced last year in Turkey, and it was my first race back after a big injury. And I hadn't done the amount of training I'd normally done. So it didn't feel like I had that mental thing to fall back on if you've done the work. And it didn't feel like I had that foundation to fall back on. So I still remember rocking up to the start line and feeling once again out of my comfort zone. Like, I can't do this. I'm not sure why I'm here. And that was some of the voices in my head. But then I had this other little voice going, shut up, you're wrong. You're not telling me the truth. Like, there's just this other little thing that I use very similar things to what Grace has said, because we've obviously done similar work in the way of 5 things I can see, 5 things I can hear, 5 things I can feel, 5 things I can touch. And by the time you've been through all of those, you're actually a fair way down the road. And so I have so many little games that I play with myself. One being Dory. I have been known to Dory for 13 kilometers straight up a climb, which is just, I am singing out loud, just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. And I'm not letting any other thought get into my head. And as soon as another thought comes into my head, I picture Dory and I'm just saying, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. And I've done that for an hour and a half straight. And it gets you all of a sudden to an aid station where then things change and you get bottles and things happen, and all of a sudden your brain's distracted. Another one I do is Pac-Man, where I imagine people ahead of me are the little ghosts, and I'm Pac-Man and I'm trying to eat them up. And if there's no people ahead of me because it's an ultra and there's no one around, the trees are the ghosts. And each tree I'm eating up is another step closer to the finish line. Like, there's so many little things I do to get out of my own way, because I feel like this general awareness of going, your brain is just trying to get in the way and your body actually can do it. And I proved myself that again, but I still remember that entire race in Turkey, 38 kilometers of racing. The whole way I was doubting myself. The voice in my head was really loud that day. And I actually got to, I think, about 30 Ks, and I was in the lead, but I didn't know how much by. And I just made the decision in my head. I'm like, if the person in second comes, they can have it. I'll give it to them. They can have it. But even while I'm having these thoughts, because I've pushed through them so much and I've distracted myself, I never actually let myself stop. I'm like, so I when they're really, really loud in my head and I actually can't distract myself from them, I go, okay, you're allowed to think like this, but while moving. And it's amazing the power that has in an ultra, because it turns out in this race, as an example, she caught me with only 1K to go. And by the time you're 1K to go and you've led a race for 37 Ks, yeah, I wasn't losing that thing anymore. Like, I wasn't willing to give it up anymore. So it's for me, it's less about changing the voice necessarily, as much as either accepting it and keeping moving, or distracting from it. And someone once said to me on a trail too, actually last weekend, they said it, and it was, you're allowed to have a sook just as long as you keep moving. And it's really good advice in an ultra, because there's lows and you're allowed to have them, but just keep moving.
Yeah, I love it. I locked myself in the toilet in my Bruny Island solo. I just thought, no one can get me out of here. I'll just stay here. I had my little sook, but then I got moving again. I'm going to pick on you a little bit here, Simone, just for a second before we go to the next question, which is directly for you, Grace. But obviously, for you with what's going on now, Golden Trail Series, it's not going to plan. How are you dealing with getting through that?
Nothing in my life has gone very much to plan for 12 months now. So I got majorly injured 12 months ago now, and I still haven't really made it back. I did that race in Turkey, and I've been pretty much in the injury locker again ever since. The hard thing this time around is that it's an unknown injury. It's one that scans don't show. It's one that people I've got a lot of specialists helping me out, and we're getting there, but it's kind of feels like a guessing game. And so no one can tell me when it's going to be better, when the pain's going to go away, all those sorts of things. Chuck on top of that, you would love this actually, Grace. My dog, who is right here next to me right now, she's actually was a service dog for me for 3 years, purely for dissociative episodes, because she was trained to lick my face if I was about to dissociate. If she could sense me sort of losing a little bit of touch of reality, she'd sit on top of me and lick my face. And while I've been injured, she's 11 years old now, and she's just started having seizures. So there's so much going on for me right now that I've kind of had to go, okay, accept that right now is a crap time. We've been here before, and we've gotten to some pretty incredible times after the crap times before. Therefore, it's not this is the power I've brought into this one, or the knowledge I've brought into this one, of going, it's not a permanent state. And I even had a week there where everything very much reminded me of a depressive episode, because I was like, okay, I can't be bothered cross training anymore. Everything hurts. I'm just going to not get out of bed. I'm going to watch movies all day. And I let myself do it for a little bit. But the difference was that I didn't feel like it was a bad thing, because I knew it was going to end. And I knew that it's not permanent and it's going to get better. So right now, with my injury, I feel like all I'm keeping in the back of my mind is going, okay, sucks, there's no timeline, but there is, like, if you keep changing things, something's got to improve at some point in time. And if you keep searching for answers, I spent years searching for answers for my mental health, and I just attacked my physical health the same way. So still searching for answers. Also, the gratitude piece of still going, what can I do? So yes, a few days ago, I missed the first Golden Trail National Series. Must admit, I couldn't bring myself to be at the start line or the finish line, but the way I got around that was I was out on the mountain all day with my little brother, and things like that. And then at Kunanyi, you will see me probably at the start and the finish. I can probably stomach it, but I will have already run the VK. Because I can't run flat, but I can run uphill. So I'm in this constant process of going, rather than wake up going, I can't run, that sucks. I'm waking up going, I can mountain bike. I can elliptical to Kingdom Come. I can do the rehab so I can run someday. So it's really this long journey that everyone that's been injured has been on. But it's the same thing as an ultra, right? It's like you don't necessarily know when the pain of an ultra is going to end, other than the finish line. And I don't have a finish line, but it is still the same concept of going, you just got to keep taking one step at a time, distract the brain, get through the next day, and hope that it improves at some point.
Yeah, it's a fantastic attitude. And obviously, as you know, there's always a mic waiting for you on the finish line with me. I'll have you there anytime you like when you're down here. So I did hear a little rumour today to say that you were running the 5K. The vertical K, sorry, which is unbelievable. All right, Grace, this one's for you. Comes from Matty Pierce. He says, you've always got great jams listed on your Strava runs, Megadeth, Iron Maiden. Where does the love of 80s rock come from? And do you ever use this awesome fuel to stoke the run fire?
Oh, my goodness. I'm really chuffed that there's some people who are following me on Strava who've tuned in. Yeah, I probably get that from my father. And it's interesting because my father is a fantastic sportsman. He played cricket for Tassie and he played baseball and hockey. He's one of those freaks of nature who can just pick anything up pretty instantly, but he can't run very well. So I've got that over him. But he grew up, obviously he was born in the 56. So he grew up in the 60s and 70s and fed me on a diet of, I would say classic rock, bit of metal, some funk, soul, really just like that authentic music, which to me is like authentic movement. I don't like listening to that manufactured stuff, but I don't always listen to music. In fact, I rarely listen to music when I'm running because I like to be so in tune with all of my senses and the environment that I'm in at the moment. But what will pump me up beforehand, like, for example, if I have to drive to, like just to the start of Nyanyi or something, or if I have to drive to a session on a flat road, what I'll do to pump myself up is listen to those jams and really hear each of the sounds. Like that's what I love about that era of music from, about the 60s to like the late 80s, 90s, even pushing it, is that you can hear all of the different instruments, all the songs tell a story. I mean, I'm in London right now, and I've got to admit that my dad taste means that one of my favourite bands of all time is Dire Straits, and they're like folk rock tracks. Like I love that you can follow it from start to finish, and there's an entirely different story along the way that unfolds. And I think that, again, that really mirrors running. The start of an ultra is never the same as the end of an ultra. You go through all different, almost epochs of a life. It's like a microcosm of a life. And I like music that's a microcosm of a life as well.
Yeah, awesome. Maddie recommends Run to the Hills by Iron Maiden.
I'm going to see Iron Maiden in September, so
nice.
I'm stoked.
Maddie's recommendation there. Lincoln, I'm going to throw this one at you and see what you think about it, and the girls as well after you've had a chat about it. But the good old hurt locker. Obviously, it appears at different times for everyone on the run. We've all been in it. What are your tips for getting through it?
We choose to be there. So, that's definitely something. And for me, I just go back to the psyche and the emotional side of wanting to be there and the reasons behind that. And that's, when I'm in the hurt locker, or I've actually bonked pretty hard in every single ultra. It took me every single ultra I've ever done, which hasn't been too many, to be honest, to realise that I'm crap at fueling. But no ultra has ever gone to plan, and there's even in adventure missions, which are much less intensity, and your risk tolerance is a fair bit lower because you're out there so deep. But nothing ever goes to plan, and so hurt locker. I mean, it always hurts. I'm ready for that. I know that I'm going to be diving deep into a lot of physical pain, and that's almost sort of that's part of the experience, and that adversity is part of the reward of just keep on pushing through that, and you sort of dig deeper and peel back more and more layers of yourself to keep uncovering, well, what's deeper, what else have I got, and it's a beautiful exploration, and then to do it in amazing places and to connect with those places on their terms, because the only way to be safe out in the deep wilderness is to try and open yourself up to observe and understand it as much as possible so you can work with it. Definitely not try and conquer it. Good luck. And then, of course, connect with the people that you're out there with. Solo adventures are pretty gnarly. I prefer to share the adventures and the connections you make with those people that you choose each other to be out there with is pretty amazing. So you share the hurt locker, and the landscape observes your hurt locker, and when you're open to the landscape and trying to understand it may observe your little hurt locker and also go, well, yeah, so what? Little human out there in my big landscape, suck it up, deal with it. And that humbleness of being out in such landscapes, I think, is a positive feedback on power that, yeah, look, I'm just this small little, human out there amongst the geological timescales and geomorphological timescales of this landscape. Hopefully that sort of answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Grace has just informed me that her Mac is about to die in London. We are getting very low on power, so she might just disappear in a couple of seconds. Not a question here from Linda, but a statement. It takes an incredible amount of courage to admit to abuse, whether physical or mental. Thank you, Simone and Grace, for sharing. I know it's hard. Happy running, ladies. Thanks for that, Linda. It's a really nice sentiment there. And Lincoln's kind of touched on one. I just wanted to get your views on, Grace, having come from being a road runner to now being a trail runner. And that's about how the trails boost mental health more broadly. Obviously, the road's pretty straight and narrow, the trails. How does that boost your mental health, just being out there amongst the wilderness and, the trails on Kanani and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I think that similar to what Lincoln was saying about, kind of really integrating with your whole environment and trusting that there's a lot of other stuff going on. One of my close friends, Nessa, always reminds me of this great proverb, which is the land knows you even if you're lost. And I remind myself of that when I'm out in the wilderness, which is my favorite place to be. There's something about road running that serves a purpose, but it doesn't quite have all of the elements of a trail, which I think is a better replica for life's unpredictable nature. That it has moments of beauty, it has ups, it has downs, literally and figuratively. And I find that trails are probably better for mental health for that reason, because you can't possibly be more present than having to look where you put each step. And you'll learn pretty quickly. I've stacked it a lot in my time. You'll learn pretty quickly the hard way that if you're entertaining something else, past or future, that you'll get bitten. And yeah, all trails bite differently. I love that. In fact, the last time I had a really awful episode in the hurt locker was on a 56-kilometre trail ultra, 2 bays. It's from it goes across the Mornington Peninsula in Victoria. It's an absolutely stunning course, and I had a bad day where I couldn't control a certain element. I've got endometriosis, and occasionally I'll get a flare for whatever reason. And in this particular case, it was because I decided to wear compression tights during a race, which I'd never done before. And I have disease that's proliferated all around my pelvic organs and in particular near my bowel. And so I got this flare about 20 Ks into this 56K race. And I had to tell myself, like, this is not going to last forever, even though it feels in that moment like time is warped and it is going to last forever. I had to tell myself that, it'll pass. And I just lent into everybody else that was there. Other competitors were trying to offer help. One of the regulars who runs the course, and I think she's won it before, Narelle, she was a doctor. she's a doctor, and she was doing the talking for me, and explaining to all the people at the aid stations who were very kindly offering me things that weren't going to help me. And I think that's the beauty of the running community. I think we often think of it as being a solo sport, but it really isn't. It's a community thing, and you go through it all together. As Lincoln was saying, when you're in that pain locker, you're actually not by yourself. And I remember seeing Simone on the course as well towards the end. And it's those little moments that really boost your mental health, because you're reminded of that solidarity. You're all out there together suffering. And they say the meaning of compassion is to suffer together, because we can't really eradicate the pain of life, but we can alleviate it. And the way that we alleviate it is by cooperating and moving forward as one.
Yeah, wow, that's toughness right there. That's absolute mental toughness to be running with those sort of things going on. In case we lose you, Grace, we will say a massive thank you for joining us today, and all the way from London and taking some time out of your trip over there to sit and have a chat with you. We look forward to seeing what you can do on the mountain, in 10 days' time, in that Golden Trail Series event. The National Series, obviously the round 2 of that, which is a massive thing for Tasmania to have and for KMR to be a part of. So thank you very much for your time. Sultans of Swing, driving home after a great day out in the trails, is a recommendation from Charlie Jones. Obviously, one of your favourites, being a Dire Straits fan there, but thank you very much for joining us. You guys have all spoken about it a little bit. When it goes out there, and obviously we've spoken to you, days that don't go to plan, and Lincoln's told us that there's no trail run that goes completely to plan. What about when it goes not to plan straight from the start? I know I've had runs and races where from minute one it's like it's not on. How do we mentally get ourselves through that? You wake up late.
Pivot. Pivot the goal, that's one thing I've definitely learned. Everyone learns the hard way, I feel like, and because things can go wrong before the start, like the night before, the day before, the week before, and I think I've learned the hard way, and I've seen many people learn the hard way, then if you don't pivot something, you kind of just go home empty-handed and disappointed, and often that is pivoting the goal, pivoting the plan. It's like, I'll use the analogy of a marathon runner that's trained for 12 weeks, 4 months for this one marathon, and they rock up on the day and it's 30 degrees. And I don't care how fit you are, you're not running as fast on a 30-degree day as you planned. But you'll see people go out at the pace that they planned for, and it never goes well. And the same thing can happen on the trail. The same thing can happen in a long race or short race. I've had this happen in 5Ks, where things have gone wrong and you almost enter this tunnel vision of going, nope, I'm going to get it done anyway. We're going to do this, and we're going to do it the way I planned, and I'm going to make it fine, even when you can't. Alternatively, as soon as things start to go awry in any ultra, in any race, whether that's before the start, at the start, or like 1K in, I've fallen in a race real bad 1K in. And it's like this immediate pivot in my brain of going, okay, what's the next best for today? Given this new information, what's the next best for today look like, and aim for that instead? Because if I kept being the bulldog going straight for the same goal, I'm not going to reach it, or I'm going to absolutely destroy myself to get there, and it's just going to look very different to the day that it was meant to be anyway. So as soon as there's external factors that are coming in that are affecting you, we try, like as Grace did on the day at 2 bays, try and push and push and push through. But eventually you'll find out that you can't do that at all times. So I will keep myself in it for as long as possible. I do always have in the back of my mind, give yourself a chance, at least give yourself a chance. But it's not that I must do this and this has to happen anymore. It's this, give yourself the grace of things might turn around, but also how do we start problem solving? It's one thing I love about trail. It's all about problem solving, more so even than the road or any other environment in running. There's so much more problem solving that goes on, and sometimes you got to use that real early. So I've had nights where I've slept 1 hour before a race because I'm so damn anxious for the race. And immediately I'll pivot. I'll just get to the start line, and it's rather than going, okay, here's my time goal, here's how I'm going to do the first 10K, it becomes a ease into it, see how we go. The goals are going to adjust as you go. We've all been in mid-race and not hitting our times, and you have to pivot. But if you don't, it kind of ends up being at your own detriment, because you might get to the end, but even if you get to the end and it's just off your goal, or you don't reach the goal that you had in your mind at the beginning before things went wrong, you can be left feeling like you've achieved nothing. Whereas if you've pivoted and you've set yourself this new goal, given the new information, you can get to the finish line having achieved that goal and get that little rush of endorphins of going, yeah, okay, I still did something good today. Not everything went to crap and today was a horrible day. So I think that's definitely my tactic, pivot.
Yeah, I can absolutely concur with the thing can go wrong before a race. My Bruny Ultra, I jumped in the shower and the whole shower head came off in my hand. I'm standing there going, I need to shower before I start running this long. And so, yeah, from minute one, it went wrong. And you're right, you do pivot. It is a case of, okay, well, this is now, I missed my start time by 35 minutes on where I wanted to be there, because there's no bulk start in that. You start anywhere between 4:30 in the morning till 8 or 9 o'clock.
Oh, cool.
And so I missed it. And yeah, it was a case of, okay, we just need to to go and, get it done. Forget the time. Let's just get this race done and say we've done it. Any final thoughts, guys? We have hit the hour mark. Grace has run out of power in London, or they've kicked off the Wi-Fi for only buying one juice. Any final thoughts on mental strength and running? And I'll throw to you first, Lincoln, for any final thoughts you might have on this topic that we've spoken about tonight.
Yeah, I just love what Tim was talking about there, of really managing expectations. And this is something that we've been working with the KMR scholarships team on. And someone much wiser than me once said, and somehow I've remembered it, the sole source of all disappointment is expectation. And so a lot of our own expectation in any run, no matter which run it is, if you feel disappointment and you dig in, well, why am I disappointed? Well, it's because there's an expectation there. And quite often it can be a subconscious expectation that you didn't know was there. But if you have a hard enough look at it and unpack where that expectation comes from, and then understanding that expectation means that then moving forward, you might have a chance of adjusting that expectation, or knowing that it's there means, well, hey, I choose now, or try to choose, consciously choose that expectation will be different. And of course, if you have no expectations whatsoever, you're always going to be pleasantly stoked. And so, I love that managing expectations. And going into any event, even if you try and have zero expectations, they're always there. And but going through an event or a personal adventure, exploring what those expectations might be, and with every setback, you'll find, there's that disappointment feel come back. All right, let's unpack that. Where'd that come from? What did I expect that is now not happening? Oh, cool. Okay. And that's another part of distraction. I find that, it's just so much amazing stuff that you can go through, and then you're talking with the people you're running with about all this stuff and everything. But the final comment for me is that running in the bush keeps me sane. And without it, I'd be a nutter. And, I need to run more in my current life of this year. There has not been enough running, and I'm slowly turning into a nutter. But why it keeps me sane is breathing in the bush, breathing in the smells, breathing in the sights, breathing in the connection with the land. It's just beautiful. And that's what I want to share with anyone who's interested, and that is one of the fundamental reasons why I've wanted to create KMR, is to share these amazing benefits with keeping sane and, you know, taking care of yourself. Stepping out on the trails for yourself is just so powerful. And let's do more of it.
Yeah, absolutely. For you, Simone, Julie has jumped on and said she was thinking of you and the film we watched a couple of weeks ago when you were down here out at Willie Smith, another one of our great sponsors, partners that we have. And she had COVID 2 weeks ago, which is obviously not ideal prep for KMR, but she's now altered her expectations and that she'll get it done and enjoy it, but not as fast as prepared as I would have been. And that's what you were saying.
And that's the way to still enjoy it. Yep.
Yep.
Exactly. That's the way to still enjoy it. And I suppose what I would I'd love to leave everyone with is kind of my my guiding principle that I used to get through a lot in life, and now I get through a lot in running. And it's a simple words that I'll pack down a little bit, just because the words are do the hard thing. And so I encourage everyone, as I'm about to explain, when you're out there on the trails, and this works in life too, when you have any hard decision to make, do the hard thing. Now, the hard thing looks different in different situations, because I'm not about to sit here and say, always push on, always stay on the path you're on. You have to finish every race, because that's just not the case. So I have one thing that I always ask myself when I've got those voices in my head, either saying slow down. For me, when I'm racing and I'm trying to push my limits, the voices are saying slow down. They're never saying stop. They're saying, oh, slow down, preserve yourself, save yourself. And then at times in ultras, they're saying stop. There's one question I ask myself first, and that's, is my mind giving me reasons to change path, or is my mind giving me excuses to change path? And big difference, because if my mind's giving me reasons, this hurts, it may get better, I've rolled my ankles, it's going to be worse by the finish line, and I'm going to be in a pretty bad spot afterwards if I finish. Great reason to call it a day and live to fight another day. I'm hot, I'm tired, I haven't eaten enough, I've got blisters, all the other excuses. Or for me, when it's a case of slow down or stay in it, it's always a case of do the hard thing and stay in it. But when it's a case of do I keep going or do I stop, even a case of do I rock up to the start line or do I not? Do I chicken out last minute? Those little things, am I getting reasons or excuses? And anytime I'm getting excuses, I know the hard thing to do is stay on path. Anytime I'm getting reasons, the hard thing to do is to change path, because it's making that right decision for your future self. So in any moment, on the day, on the trail, on the days in the lead up, the mental strength you gain from doing the hard thing, because once you get to the finish line, having been through something hard, the empowering nature of that is incredible. But also having done the hard thing of backing yourself when things aren't going well, and knowing that you've got your own back. There's the two positives that come from it. In mental strength is like life-changing when you keep doing it over and over and over again. So every day, in so many little decisions in life and also on the trail, my guiding principle, I suppose, is do the hard thing. And it looks different in different circumstances. It used to look like the hard thing was to eat this tub of yogurt. The easy thing is listen to the eating disorder voice and not do it. So that's just another life example of how this works. But that's just every single little thing. Have the hard conversations, do the hard bit of training, getting out of bed, reason or excuse. All the time I'm asking that question. And then this decision I make on what I follow comes from that.
Yeah, love it. And the guys out there are loving it as well. Christine said, well, certainly no disappointments from tonight's extraordinary contributions. Thank you to everyone involved in it. We will wrap it up there. Thank you to Simone. If you don't already, go and jump onto the socials and follow her on Instagram. She is at @theflyingbrick_. We love everything she does out there. She's absolutely fantastic. To Lincoln, brilliant again, mate. Love the work and this fantastic event that we're only 10 days away from, guys. Give him a follow. He is silverfox.runs. And in her absence, we do, of course, thank Grace for being with us as well. And she's on Instagram, @Maney_Taz_MC. 10 days away, guys. Don't forget next Friday, mandatory briefing with Lincoln at the Run Hub. We have the Hobart Trail Runners and Salomon event at Ferntree next week. And don't forget this Saturday as well, jump onto Facebook. There is another fantastic event, Our Mountain. Spend time on the mountain hearing and sharing stories. That's going to be awesome. It is a free event, but it is ticketed. So jump onto the KMR Facebook page and look at all our events there and make sure you sign up for that. And don't forget, when you're out there doing your final bits of training and your tapering, don't forget to tag at Kunani Mountain Run on all of that with, and of course, every step a story. And we're all looking forward to joining you next or Saturday week, finishing across that finish line, getting a sweaty high five and a smile, and sharing all your chances to 1,000 step of stories and your run with Kunani. That's been the last in our series of the stories that have for KMR. It's been my pleasure to be part of it, and thank you to the guys that have come and joined us on here. As I say, we look forward to seeing you in 10 days' time at the Run Hub, Friday night for the opening ceremony, and then on Saturday to kick off in anger, or not in anger, to run with Kunani, get up on that mountain and enjoy the paradise we have here in Hobart. So thanks, team. Thanks for joining us. Thank you to Lincoln. Thank you to Sim, and we look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thanks, matey. Thanks, team. I feel so privileged to share the airwaves with Sim and Grace tonight. And Maney, you've got lots of stories in there too, so look forward to unpacking some of those at some point. What's your current run streak? How many days
currently is 438 days straight. I haven't missed a run. I do have to try and figure out I've got to try and figure out how to get one in on Saturday while I'm up there trying to talk. That might be useful. You might be on the microphone while I go for a 3K run.
Yeah, that's happening.
We'll sort that out for sure. Definitely.
Sorted.
No, well, there's a lot of mental strength in that, Maney, and well done. But yeah, thanks so much, Sim and Grace. Yeah, I just feel so privileged, and thanks for sharing on behalf of KMR and our community. Cool.
So easy.
All good. See you guys.
Bye.